This is the intro song for the AP World History Project for conflict. Now sit down and watch it for an hour's 30 minutes. Ding. Alright, this is personally this is a much easier thing to talk. Did I forget to? I forgot to erase a part. This is ruined now. I have to completely restart this project. Okay. Okay, so it's India and Pakistan and how they were split. So basically, imagine a big, humble India. That's India. It was ruled by Britain. They're like, yay, we keep the peace. And then people like the Muslims, like the big Muslim leaders, Gandhi, Indian leaders, they come along and say, we want our own country. And like the Indian leaders be like, yeah, we can all be happy as one, all love each other and stuff. But Muslim people are like, no, that's not gonna end well. We're a minority. You're gonna murder us. Which was a very good thing to think about. They learned from other people. So good job, Muslims. So eventually the British left after lots of peaceful protests by Gandhi's part and stuff. Eventually, there there did end up being violence as people moved to the newly formed Pakistan's, which is now I think Bangladesh. I don't know what I'm thinking of. 1 second. I need to look this up. Map of India. Should it's okay, I need to see what it's called. It is Bangladesh, I know it. So then there's like Pakistan's, and then there's India, and there's like Nepal here, which is not even related. Yeah, this is like Pakistan. So Pakistan, what it turned into Bangladesh, and this is India, the Indian majority. And while these people are going over here, there is violence as they move out, shown in the story that we did read in class. And like some people were more accepting, some people weren't. There was violence, and like Gandhi, he was like very displeased with this. So yeah, like eventually settlements were they were eventually sorted out. And between like here, there's like a ceremony like twice every day at like a certain border spot, like probably around here somewhere. We'd, like do a marching thing, basically trying to show off to the other country. And in my opinion, if they had an armed conflict, I'm thinking these people would win. Just, probably not, just a billion population, you know. Yeah. Like, before that, the British were the main reason that the Muslims and Indian people were not already fighting in the streets, because they kind of knew how to keep control, as they've had a lot of experience with American colonies. In pretty much every single colony in the world, if you think about it. They were good colonizers. Not like that kind of good, but kind of good and we're like, yeah, we know how to colonize. Now again, I don't really know where a good spot to start this topic is, but this is basically political changes being accompanied by major demographics and social consequences. It started out, it's going to be about old colonial borders and population resettlement. And basically, a big one of these is Israel and Palestine, the Jewish nation of Israel and the Islamic nation of Palestine. Now, here's about the current borders in a rough thing. Like, oh, well, those can't be the correct borders. Who's that right there? Oh, this is that's Palestine right here. And this is right over here, this big blob is Israel. Is it this real though? Have yet to find out. Now, most of this happened in the mid to late 1900s. Like, it happened when in the Africa campaign, not the Africa, what am I saying? In the Middle East, after a bunch of wars and stuff, they realized that like there's a lot of Jewish here. Why don't we give them their own state so they stop intermingling with Palestinians? Because we learned from places like Rwanda, it's not good to have two different groups in one area. They kill each other. So their plan was like, oh, well, you have like 50% and you have, let's pretend this is a 50-50 split. So this is like Palestine over here with the Pale, and this is like Israel right here, like, oh yeah, we're friends. But then there's like Jerusalem, which basically has a pretty tight hold on every single religion. It has Islam, Jewish, it has the Islamic faith, the Jewish faith, and the Christian faith all in it. All in Jerusalem. This place right here. And Israel, they're like, well, maybe we want this place. The Palestine's like, no, we want it. We were here first. Like, the Jews are like, no, we were here first. It's our destiny to have this place. And Palestine's like, what? So basically, these places go to war, and this happens. But the thing is, the countries like Jordan and all the countries around them, they're like beforehand, they're like, oh, let's just declare war on Israel, 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 bad, bad. But the U.S. is like this big honcho right here, called the U.S. of A. They're like, no, I don't approve of this. Let's send even more support. Let's make this line bigger. Just show how much support they got. They're like, yeah, let's just keep pumping in resources. Keep pumping them in. They're like, we can't keep up with that. So eventually, this right here is what happens. And the Palestinians and Israel, the Jewish, there's a very big conflict zone here of protesters from Palestine versus people from Israel. And honestly, it's not a good situation. Because we have tried to create things like this where it's like, okay, border like this. But then they're like, wait, who gets Jerusalem? They're like, why do you guys care so much? Because no one's going to be happy no matter the side. Like, oh yeah, why don't we just split it like this? Here's Jerusalem, 50-50 split. But they have our thing on their side. Okay, then why not something like this? The line, Jerusalem, now you guys have that part. But now we have left of the city. Okay, how about this? And then goes a bit like that. Well, no, they have a bigger chunk of land there. Like, it's just an impossible conflict, an impossible debate that no one in these two countries can agree on yet. And hopefully one day they will be able to at one point or another. I'm gonna continue drinking this milk. This is some really good milk. You should try it. So I'm going to talk about the collapse of land empires in places like Europe, the Middle East, and all the way over in Asia, being Russia, the Ottomans, and the Qing Dynasty. Now, the first and easiest to talk about is the Ottomans, who were, up until World War II, already losing land places like Europe and other surrounding countries. They had basically a huge inability to modernize, basically due to a bunch of in political fightings where like someone was trying to reform, but then like the Janissaries basically went up and overthrew them because like they were Janissaries, they didn't want to lose their power. But then someone else came, built like a private army and eliminated the Janissaries, which allowed more modernization to come in, and he actually did quite a bit. But then later a ruler came in and basically said, no, we don't want any of this modernization here. We only want the modernization in the military, in which he did. When he later died, and like, this basically, it all fell to pieces for the Ottoman Empire when they did that, and they sort of collapsed during World War II with like the Armenian genocide, which Turkey still refuses to say happened. And then it just eventually fell to modern day Turkey and other countries. Now, moving on to Russia, it was basically during World War One is when they failed, because the Tsar, the leader of Russia, Nicholas, he kept trying to fight during World War II against the Australians and the Germans, which were right over here. And he kept repeatedly failing, sending more people over and over there, and people in Russia was starving. So eventually they had a revolution on their hands for a more democratic, democracy, I should say. So eventually they had their democracy, and then they're like more fighting after that to eventually become a communist country called Soviet Russia until later on in the 1900s. Then last was the Qing Dynasty, which was also much in part due to Europe. Europeans were constantly intervening in Chinese affairs. They were putting an opium in the country, and eventually, when China tried to stop the opium trade, Europe said no, kind of went to war. The Qing Dynasty got crushed and was never the same again. They had things like the Boxer Rebellion, which was a rebellion against the westernized policies of Europe, and eventually they just kind of fell apart to civil war for a while. And that's basically what happened to them. They basically went to like warring states, communism, history, being bullied. That's what happened to China. Ottomans just kind of did not modernize Russia. You went to war for too long. If you just stayed out of it, you would have survived pretty well. But everyone else in like Europe and Asia and communists, they were all happy because these two kind of went communist in the end. Well, they're still communist over here in China. Russia's now not communist, basically. Ottomans, you're just the Turks. This one also having to do with borders, population settlement, I'm really less sure about. This is about more of the Middle Eastern states, which is a pretty big area if you think about it, with a lot of states like that are all over the place. But the main way I understand it was mainly after the USSR split, in which like 4 new stans made, like Kazakhstan or however you say them. There also places like Afghanistan, which USSR tried to invade. Like, it's just all a big confusing mess. That's my personal opinion of the Middle East. It's a big mess of whatever, according to history. It's like, I can't even make sense into after Googling for a few minutes. Like, just trying to think of a way to explain this. Like, so basically, here's the big USSR. It's big. But then they're like, oh, we're no longer USSR, so let's just redraw some borders. Oh, look at all this new land. There's like, uh, there's another stan here. There's a new country here. 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 And here. And here. So basically, that's as well as UCR. Let's imagine a bunch of new states forming in response to like a rebellion from the old USSR, which is now Russia, with a very nice guy named Putin, who's basically been in control for a pretty long time. I'm glad we only have 8-year-long presidents, else we may get this guy right here for 8 years long, for more than 8 years, which would suck. Please don't do it, America. So yeah, going back to these, like there's like yeah, Kazakhstan and Ukraine. Can't figure out Ukraine because Russia recently was like, we're gonna take this part right here. Okay, bye. And that caused some quite big controversy. So yeah, like also I guess you could also maybe put down like over in India, division of like Pakistan and India, but Pakistan is also kind of considered like a Southern Asian country, uh, also kind of considered the Middle East. That's one of the best thing to do. Pull up a map now. Let's just pull up a map of the Middle East. Like, when you look at the Middle East, like it's confusing, man. Like this is the Middle East, but I also kind of consider over here a bit of the Middle East. Like there's like Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. These places are all kind of involved. Like Afghanistan, like, you hear about them a lot with the Middle Eastern discussion. Like, when I think of the states over here, I can't really think of much division among them, apart from these places when they broke free from the Soviet Union. Like with Afghanistan, like if not well, Afghanistan was invaded by the USSR when they were here. It was placed in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyz, whatever. Like I really consider this the main division point in the mandatory states. Not over here because these countries were kind of already declared, unless you like specifically talk about over here, which has been already been talked about. So it's not really the same thing. Because this is a hard topic to explain. Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna drink some milk. Call this one good. Alright, so national leaders at this time in both Asia, in like Southern Asia, Eastern, not, no, Western Asia, like Gandhi and Ho Chi Minh, they were both against the colonizers of both French and British and India and Vietnam. While Mahatma Gandhi, in India did more peaceful protests against the British, like walking down to the sea to make salt, in other kind of peaceful protests like starving himself. Ho Chi Minh was more to the violent side and went to war against the French. And later, Americans, when the country was going to buy a vote, come together, buy a vote to go to either communist or not communist. And of course, the Americans supported the non-communist side, or South Vietnam, which is right here, while the communists, supported by the USSR, were right here. In the end, they went down here, and victory, and communism wins. And that is nationalist leaders. They both achieved victories over their colonizers, and yeah, pretty neato. Really considering not using images from the internet on here, but I personally couldn't describe all the non-aligned countries and aligned countries during World War. Not during the Cold War. So in the blue right here are these guys are observing countries, which is really observe. Pretty good tactic. And then in the dark blue, there are member countries of the non-aligned movement, which wouldn't pick a side in the Cold War. And they are the members. That just makes things a bit more clear. Like there are like most of Africa, was it? Almost all of Southern America, Central America, almost all of Asia. They were part of the non-aligned movement as either observing or member countries. So basically, that limits the playing field mainly to Europe, mainly to the northern hemisphere of Earth, plus some Antarctica. They were like really involved in the war effort. Like these guys are sending like trillions of troops. Like, I'm not really sure why something like that. I think they said it made like countries like can I do this myself? Like kind of like like the red countries that are generally areas where people were aligned with people, and that's kind of weird. It's communism was so associated with red and stuff. Anyways, yeah, you can really see like how many different countries there were aligned, and how it was mainly Northern Hemisphere countries, like I just said. And like all the other countries are like, yeah, we can't really choose a side here, and they didn't, which was actually really great because the less sides that choose it, like let's say these sides went to war, none of these sides joined, and only this part of the Earth is destroyed, and then this part is really kind of fine, apart from maybe the border parts. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, they really just produced an alternative because all these countries are like, yeah, we can just trade. Like, oh yeah, we can't trade with you. But why not? Silence. Silence is the answer. So in many ways, different peoples and groups opposed the ever-growing conflict in this new period, or the 1900s and onwards. Picasso himself painted his painting, which I cannot pronounce. It's like Guinisa. I have no idea. It's like a word that means something, and it really shows the suffering of war, how bad war is. So like in the painting, like you can just, it's weird, but you can tell that it's about pain and suffering from war, and he probably said something about it himself. And just like the dull gray colors really emphasize just how dark things can get during war. And I'm honestly just not, I don't like this painting much. Like, look at the bowl in the left, near to the left corner. It has like horns sticking out of a lump on its head is what that looks like. Just weird. Anyways, let's move on. There are also nuclear protesters during the Cold War, which basically protested nuclear everything, from nuclear power to nuclear weapons. They protested it. They weren't sure how far it could really go or how bad it would really be. Nuclear weapons can destroy the Earth like 20 times over. I don't know if it's more or less than that, but it's around there. It's a pretty good thing to protest if you think about it. Yeah, don't do this because we actually want to live in this world and not die a horrible and painful death. Well, maybe it won't be painful if it lands on you, but just would rather not die, until you're old. And the nuclear energy, I just guess it was because people couldn't really see where it would go. Maybe because of the Chernobyl incident, which was pretty bad, which was even felt all the way in America-ish. And there were also people, there were also people like Stitch Quang Duc, who set himself on fire in protest of the Vietnam, as he was tired of being ruled by the Christian minority. So he set himself on fire, even though like 70 to 90% of people were like whatever he was. Like I have like writing here. Okay, so 70 to 90% of the people were Buddhist, yet they were still being ruled by a Christian minority. So he lit himself on fire because he was tired of them making decisions just not in favor of the majority. And maybe the majority not knowing itself what it wants. That happen? I don't know. Maybe. And then there's also Martin Luther King Jr., who wasn't really, well, I'm going to say he was probably against conflict also, but he was really against segregation between blacks and whites, or whites in the minorities of America. And he did his best during his time to let people know about them, to go against it, to really just end it, even though it didn't happen in his lifetime, as he was assassinated later on his balcony. It eventually still paid off, and well, it's still in progress today, I will say. But his dreams really did go forward and help out a lot, and really ended like segregation. There's no black and white drinking fountains anymore. There's no different bathrooms for black and whites. There are just bathrooms that anyone can use the right way. But just still, it doesn't still stop people from being racist or anything of the manner. And as all of these people fought against the cause, fought against rising conflict in the era. Or, well, not really fought. Fought's a bad word, because they were against the conflict in the era. Like, people like Gandhi were also against it. Like, he was against the violence between the Muslims and Indians when the states were finally be separated into, like, Pakistan or Bangladesh later on in India. He was against the British occupation. He was against a lot of the bad stuff. A lot of these people are against the bad stuff, but they may have also been for some bad stuff, but we don't pay attention to that in this history. So, yeah, that's it for this one. Now for this one, I couldn't really think of a nice starting picture to do for this, because it's really about the how a conflict evolved into something bigger to allow one thing to happen. Like how as World War One went on, the Ottomans basically tried to get rid of and erase the Armenian minority of basically Christians that were in the Ottoman Empire in Armenia or whatever. That was considered one of the first genocides of period 6 or of the 1900s in the new era that we were in. And I think same thing also happened in World War II with the Holocaust, with the Jewish and the killing of like over 10 million. I'll just go with a nice estimate that I know will be under the correct one and say over because then it can't defend anyone. And then there's like places like Cambodia with the killing fields and Rwanda with the Hutus and Tutsis as that conflict embroiled on and more Tutsis were killed by the majority Hutus. But one thing we can see in all of these is that there's always a minority, and that minority is generally the one killed in the conflicts. So let me draw a nice picture for this. So let's say there's a man here, and that he has another man with him. Maybe there's a few men. They're all generally the same. They're stick figures. There's a few of them. And then, let's say the British come in, the Brits, and say, these two are leaders. So as these two are leaders, these people are part of them. So then they're like, they all get jobs. And they all get jobs. But then, there's a big majority over here who get smaller say, which is why they're smaller. See what I did there? I drew them smaller so I could represent that. And there's a lot of them. And let's just keep doing this. And there's like really a lot of them. I mean, this doesn't explain every big conflict that goes on, but this more explains like the Rwandan conflict between the Hutus and Tutsis. So these guys being like the Tutsis. And I don't think it was the British at all which did this. So this is just an example. I don't. This example didn't happen in real life. I don't think. Well, maybe they did. I don't know. And then these people are like, what? So then like the British are like, then the British, they leave. Like, oh yeah. And then there's like elections. And then after the elections, oh, these people are no longer leaders. And this guy is a leader. Since all these guys over here, all these guys, well, and he also voted for himself, voted for him. So he is now the leader, and he's like, these people did not treat us nicely. And because of that, let's just finish writing this out. Let's kill them. And so it's that this person dies, this person dies, this person dies, this person dies, this person dies. This is like a Game of Thrones episode right now, and this person dies. And then there's all the other minorities around here. Imagine that. They like try to flee out of the country over here, and then like a lot of people die. Like some of these people die fighting in it, and that's basically as it goes on, more and more people die, and it just ends up turning to a genocide like the Rwandan one or Holocaust, etc. I mean, it was different for places like Nazi Germany because it was after World War One, after anger, and they're like, we need a scapegoat, Jews. So they framed it on the Jews, brainwashed people into thinking that, killed more than 10 million of them, and you know the history of it. And that's basically how it happens. This is probably going to be my longest one. Isn't this great? Also, I have to say, the birthday cake I've been eating, it's fantastic. Genociding birthday cake. They always go together. Whoops. Yeah, one thing I would like to talk about, because it's not really talked about anywhere else. This isn't really. Actually, no, I'm going to put it under catalyst, but I don't think it's mentioned extra. But the space race and the big globality of that, it's not mentioned much at all. Like, that's a pretty big concept when you think about it, because, well, for one, we're going to space. It's a big competition between the Soviet Union and the United States to go to space, in which, well, in my opinion, the Soviets won. Like, basically they said, yeah, we're going to go to space. Then the US was like, we're going to go to the moon. Like, well, so is this the moon? Oh, you're at the moon. Yeah. So what if you guys sent first everything to space? We got to the moon first. Basically, they were like, oh, no, you didn't. Like, yes, we did. Now, hopefully we get dragged into another space race to go to Mars. Or maybe to terraform Mars too, or maybe to make our planet better. That would be pretty nice. Well, who knows what will actually happen. Will we go to the red planet? Yeah, this is Mars. Will we go back to the moon, which should honestly be pretty boring, and we shouldn't? Oh, wait. Oh, I caught it before I did it. Will we go back to the moon? This actually kind of looks like more like like a lemorange, lemonge, oran, oran. Perfect. Yeah, that kind of looks like an orange, but not like a space race type thing, where there'll be like a rocket ship floating in the sky, and we're going like there, hopefully one day, because like SpaceX. Well, who cares about SpaceX right now, actually? So yeah, hopefully we have another space race. Yeah, because I can't believe that this topic was basically pretty much ignored throughout the entire packet. I was just thinking about it when I was looking for a song to listen to for a minute. So yeah, other than that, I'm gonna go back to Starman. Chinese history is Tiananmen Square and the protests that happened there that promoted more democracy in China. And one of the most well-known videos is the line of tanks, which I am representing right here in the red, going against the one man in the road. Now that wasn't exactly in Tiananmen Square, but it was part of the same protest. And like you can see how I painted him blue, and how he's really big, centralizing the idea is that this is what some people wanted. I don't know if all the people wanted. And then like the tanks being red and smaller than the guy, showing that they were little to him. So these protests were like against democracy, and I think like a few thousand people ended up being killed in the Tiananmen Square protests. I'm 100% sure it was somewhere in the thousands. So yeah, like they wanted like freedom of the press, freedom of speech, and the result was, like I said, a massacre. And like then like they just got less freedom of speech, less freedom of press, and basically like their goals were like yeah, we want things to go better for freedom. But things just ended up actually going down for freedom. And yeah, that's why protests. Tiananmen Square, man. Tiananmen Square. Now again, I don't really have a good starting point for how to start out off with this one, which is basically national movements like communism or socialist ideas, which traveled around and basically caused many revolutions in the sixth period or 1900s and forward. Like the revolutions in Russia to basically like not be under the Tsars, and then they weren't, and like were more like democracy sided, but not really. And then they went to communism. And then other places like Vietnam, which also went to communism, and like countries all around the world, which like flocked to different ideas, since the like capitalist ideas or monarchic ideas, they no longer really worked. And really thinking about it, there's two really big countries that are communist right now, which actually kind of had a similar upbringing. And those two being, let's just draw a world map, like right here is Europe. Big old Europe full of capitalism. And right here is the USSR. And over here, China. And let's just say this is Asia. Right here is the Middle East. The Midi. Yeah, let's just say India. Because these are really two of the places where, now, the two places I really want to talk about are here in the USSR and here in China. Because when you really think about it, both of them were under like a more imperial monarchic rule where there was one big honcho at the top. In the USSR, in Russia before being the Tsar, and in here being the Emperor of China. Well, they did have some of their differences, however, but in the end, they really ended up being similar. In the USSR during World War One, Russia had to draw out of the war, with Nicholas being the leader, to deal with the rebellion of people in it trying to get free from the Tsar into a more Western type of government, I would say. And in China was places like the Boxer Rebellion, falling to the Warring States, because the like Opium Wars was basically like taking China's power and throwing a hammer at its head, and then just rolling over it because you hit someone in with a hammer and knock them unconscious. You can, yeah, it happens. Everyone gets hit with a hammer every time. So basically with that, like China was broken into warring states for a while, like before in the BCs, before like the imperial dynasties began. But the USSR, it basically went into a Western style government versus communism. And in China, it went to a Western style government, kind of ish, versus communism. But the thing is, during China, they also fought the Japanese in World War II. So basically, this was after World War II, and this was before World War II. This was before World War II over here. I think it was really in, it was really in and after World War One for when the USSR was formed. So I'll just go with after World War II to explain it, where it was basically the Reds versus the Whites. Is a good way of explaining it. Now people like Lenin, they took over the government in the USSR after the Whites took over from the previous more monarch imperialist government of the Tsars ruling. And over here, no side really had absolute control. Same for the USSR. No side really had absolute control over the country. And over here, it was the Reds versus the Whites, basically, all over again, but after World War II. And where the Reds won, and in the USSR, the Reds won. And that's really a good way to explain how communism united two nations, well, who would basically actually touch each other, but are still quite far away. They were basically united, and then there were places like Cuba over here next to the U.S., Vietnam over here, who all basically were also united by communism, as were states all around, but by like America, who did not like communism because they were heavy, hard capitalists who loved making billions of dollars, being the 1%, hating the 99%, etc. Which is also why China has Taiwan, which is the official. They think Taiwan thinks they're the actual China, and China thinks they're the actual China. And not many people actually recognize Taiwan as the official, as even a country at all, which is still an ongoing conflict to this day. And yeah. Also have some apple juice right here, pretty good. I don't know where it's made, probably U.S. I hope. I was having this with my birthday cake, but forgot the fact that I had apple juice too. Yeah, this is always good stuff. Yeah. Now, a big discussion about this is the World Wars. Just how big were World Wars? Because when you think about World War One, you think about, oh well, that was just a bunch of Europeans fighting each other. That's all it was. It wasn't a World War. Well, no, that's wrong. When you think about World War Two, you do think about it more on a grand scale, but you're like, but what about South America? What about like Southern Africa? Did they really fight? Well, yes and no. But let's just go on to World War One first, as that would be a much easier topic to explain. Now, the main bulk of World War One took place in this place called Europe. That's Europe right here. It was between like Germany right here, Britain right here. This is Britain right here. Right here. Right here is Britain. And it was like France and a bunch of other countries. There was also Russia, which later had a revolution and turned communist. Like, yeah, it was just a big frontline stalemate right around here. Just constantly until the U.S. turned to war. Like, well, yeah, the U.S., but that's just one country outside of it. What about other countries? Well, little did he know that actually China and Japan were both involved in the war because, well, like many European nations over here in this mess of squiggles, which is apparently Europe and Great Britain in a line, China and Japan were both involved in World War One. Japan involved around 60,000 troops in helping defeat German colonies over in the region. So, like, just pretend this is Japan, this is China. Yeah, it's good. You know, let's just say there was a German colony here. Japan was like, oh, hey, look, let's go over here. And then, like, the British came and helped from, like, India. Like, yeah, let's go. And, and then China was like, huh, maybe we should help. And let's go. And they declared war on Germany in 1917 to help efforts with the British, which were British and Japan were allies of the British. That was a mouthful, wasn't it? So yeah, so like lots of places were at war. Like you can imagine places like South America, they were helping more in the like production side. Like, hey, let's give production to these guys and these guys, or maybe even these guys. I don't know. And like Southern Asia and all the other places, they were like, yeah, let's just choose a side, help supply them. So it really was a true global war when you think about it. Well, not all sides were fighting each other. It was like, oh yeah, there's not a huge war also going on in South America. They're still like in it by like supplying places, giving money, and just like helping out with the war effort. Like it's saying that, oh yeah, you may have manufactured this gun in 1,000 bullets, but that doesn't do anything for the war. No, it still contributes to the war and everything when you really think about it. Like places like Australia, which are under like British rule, they still went and helped all the way over here probably, or maybe over here. It really just depends because it's really on a big global scale. Now, let's just erase this for a second so I can talk about World War II. Just do this. Okay, now I can talk about World War II right here. So, World War II was also similar to World War I. It was still Germany. Let's draw another Europe. This is a crappier one with like Great Britain and here. So this was, let's pretend, and this is China over here, and there's a bit of Japan. That's not realistic, but oh well. This basically, that's more France. This is France. Okay, this is Germany. They were like, yeah, let's invade Czechoslovakia, let's invade Poland, let's invade places, yay. And the German aim was to really just expand. And the European nation was like, yeah, no, they kind of can do this because we were kind of cruel to them. But they were like, hey, Poland, or not Poland, like, hey, country, we're gonna invade you. They were like, no, so let's invade, ah. And then like Germany was actually putting up a really decent fight. And then like Russia joined when Germany broke their non-aggression pact. They were like, nope. But then Germany was like, let's go to Moscow and invade during winter. That didn't work. Retreat, retreat. And they're like, let's go. And yeah, that's basically Russia and Germany right there. But again, like on the economic day, like later, the United States joined, just like World War One. They're like, yeah, let's go over. Then it was like South America, which are still like providing to the United States and maybe even to European countries. Like, yeah, let's give you supplies and do this. And like Japan was against the U.S. in the Pacific theater, invading China, and they invaded China in like the rape of Nanjing, I think it's called. They even did that. Like lots of countries like Australia. There's even like campaigns with Italy in northern Africa in which they like did stuff, you know. But like this was really a big global conflict because all of these countries like there was fighting in Africa, the Pacific, and Europe. I mean, even yeah, that's still Pacific all the way over there. But like other places were still like supplying and giving resources to either side, which they supported. When most of them supported the Allies, not the Axis side, because you didn't really want to mess with the United States at all ever. Still true to this day. So yeah, that's basically how the world wars were. World wars. I mean, I would love a solar system war. Like, you know how cool that would is. We like go into the places like Portugal, Britain, and other countries gained gained freedom through many different means, whether it be negotiation or armed struggle. And in this example, people ask for freedom, the colonizers say no, and so then revolution. And I don't really think this guy is going to enjoy what happens because most of the rebelling colonies, they don't really use tactics like guerrilla warfare, like not like the animal guerrilla, but guerrilla, not guerrilla, guerrilla. They use guerrilla warfare to outmaneuver, outsupply, and outgun the big colonizers who, during this period, were in an intermingle of old warfare and new warfare. So no longer was the Maxim gun the useful thing. It was now people who had the right minds, like the Castros, and taking over Cuba from the U.S.-loved leader. They basically stayed in the mountains, drew enough support, and basically took over eventually. In places like Vietnam with the Ho Chi Minh Trail, those people all used types of guerrilla warfare to gain their freedom. Although they still used it after, even if they didn't want their freedom. But they're still fighting for freedom. For communism, which wasn't freedom on our terms, but it's still freedom, nonetheless. Alright, so mainly in Africa, ever since the main European powers like Germany, Great Britain, France, as they placed borders just basically randomly at will, things never really went well for their inherited imperial boundaries or for the colonial rule. Because let's say, there's something like this going on. There's a nice border between the Hiwis and the Kiwis. They're happy. There's an occasional war, but nothing really too big. And then, during the scramble for Africa, right here, where they mess stuff up, they just like, hey, these two things shouldn't be small. They should be one big one. And then, whoops, these people are really hate each other. They're pissed. Gosh, oh no, oh noes, and then it leads to one side. Let's say the Kiwis. And then they go to the Kiwis. And then it goes to something called, wait for it, wait for it. Can you guess it? I bet you can. Oh, that's some, oh, genocide. Or genocide. Period. Whatever you want to call it. So yeah, they either are like, let us decide the borders, like this, in those exact words, and then the colonizers are like, no. They're like, please, no, war. And it can really happen in a variety of ways for the movements and things they placed to get better borders that weren't so crappy. Talking about period 6 for the entirety of the AP World History, there are 3 main concepts in it. It's science and the environment, global conflicts, and a new global economy, society, and culture. These 3 concepts all intermingle with each other and, well, are really together in all of it. And that's going to be my job to explain how they do that. So let's begin. Now, in response to this question, this was about the profiliation of conflicts and how military and militarized states reacted them. One of the best things I can think about, really, is probably the Afghanistan Jeez Lord, I cannot speak. Was the Afghanistan conflict, which was when the USSR itself invaded, and then we basically funded the soon-to-be Taliban, which actually went against us eventually, because we kind of abandoned them after the war and didn't help them rebuild or anything. How nice of us, isn't it? Here's weapons to cause destruction. Goodbye, we're leaving. Yeah, like, they're like military dictatorship, and there were a lot of military dictatorships, like in Spain during the Spanish Civil War, Chile and their wars. There was a lot of stuff, like arms trading happened all around the world where we gave arms to freedom fighters. And lots of those either worked, didn't work, or worked, and then it didn't work in the future because they kind of went against us as an extremist religious group. So yeah, all good and fun. But yeah, Afghanistan is really the best one because it was us. And like, I'm gonna Google something real quick. Cause I keep wanting to use this word. Oh yeah, okay, so basically what's a proxy war? It's a proxy war with the United States by funding the Mujahideen, I think it was at the time, against the Soviet Union, which the Soviet Union did eventually retreat. I think we did actually visit there. Like, I do know one man, his name is like, Big Boss or Solid Snake. He did visit there, and yeah, he helped a lot of people there, helped the rebels, as you call them. Not really rebels, they're kind of defending their country. Also, let's talk about the other one, as this actually does go into it, which is about violence against civilians to achieve political aims. Like, Al-Qaeda, like terrorist organizations, man. Their big tactic is fear to control people, is using the violence which causes fear to control people. It all really does work. It's really, if someone's like shooting people in front of you, are you gonna say, yeah, no, I'm not doing that? No, you're probably going to give in. I know I would. Like, yeah, you're gonna shoot shoot this person if I don't say yes? Okay, yes. Unless it's like something that will kill even more people, then I'll say no. One person for money, I would do. that sounds bad to say, wow. So yeah, like there was also the IRA or Iraq. There are a lot of groups at the time who used violence. It was a really big global thing. Like, really, is there a better way to control people? Yeah, there's plenty of better ways to control people. Like, to control them in a moment, I should say. Like, if you have, like, a moment, like, wait, if we shoot guns in the air, they'll do what we say. So, then you do it. And then it can turn into a really big thing. It can turn into an entire country being controlled by things like that. So, yeah. Well, even though we're at this, let's just go on to the next one, shall we? 'Cause I'm feeling really good. Like, popular culture and global conflicts. What a good one. And who really cares about the other things like a actually no, James Bond can be included. Like James Bond, the earlier James Bond films, the main enemy was generally the Soviet Union. And then so many of them were like the Russians. Oh, we gotta defeat the Russians. And how he was always against them, like stealing plans, being the spies in the Cold War, even if they were like the British. The British were actually on the NATO side during World War. No, God, I keep trying to call it. Well, no, let's just call it World War Cold. It was very chilly in ways. And wow, it's only 8 o'clock right now, and I'm doing this. Good job, me. So, and then like the video games, like, oh, okay, what's a popular video game that goes over Call of Duty? I don't play that one, but in like the early ones was World War II, like Call of Duty World War, which I really want a remake of, and like Call of Duty 4. Those were still like against Russians in a way. I mean, there's also like other games, but not many of them are actually during World War, World War Cold. I mean, James Bond had video games during like the Cold War and like the cool suits and ties and Tommy guns and stuff. But yeah, it just had a big influence on popular culture. Like magazines probably like showing like, yeah, go to war and yeah, like until like yeah, yeah, war equals cool culture. I mean, let me show you an example myself. Like, okay, so here's a game called Arma 3. It's a military simulation game. 267 hours. Yeah. And this was like during like I counted like 55 hours. Oh, actually I do play Call of Duty 11 hours. That's all. Okay. Like yeah, it's a big influence on people and on history and on the popular culture. Like those games were influenced by conflicts, by war in the time, which is actually kind of weird. Like, and then there's Day of Defeat, which is based on World War II. Actually, I haven't played that much of it. And yeah, Counter-Strike. This is like was the terrorism at the time. And also, I even have a game called Hearts of Iron, which is also very much influenced by Hearts of Iron 3, which is influenced by World War II. It's basically like a big game, entire world, World War II, go. And that's probably the best way I have to describe it. Because yeah, it's like showing this is actually a really good example because it really shows you like this was like after World War, not really during World War, but after World War Cold. I mean, but after it, where you play as like Russians in the metros after like the world was bombed out. Like yeah, I'm glad in like Stalker Call Pirate. This is like in Chernobyl, like a fantasy game. Like yeah, these are all good games I'm showing right now to show popular culture from global conflicts of the time, or maybe even fantasy conflicts created from conflicts. And I think that's a really interesting and intriguing thing. And wanna know what? This is my last conflict video. That's the best part. So we need like party poppers in here. Maybe I can like play a game to show conflict. That would take a while. Also Cold War Assault. I think that's during the Cold War. I think so. Maybe I should no, okay. Anyway, yeah, that's it for conflict. And I'll probably be moving on to either probably science or global economy, society, culture, etc. But so yeah, this is the end of conflict. I'll make this into a separate own video. Like make 3 different videos of this, just so I can have like one part. This is like the biggest part because conflict was the biggest part. And I'm just like rambling on, so I'm just gonna end this like right now, so I can get done with this. Goodbye. For this one, I couldn't really think of a nice starting picture to do for this because it's really about the how a conflict evolved into something bigger to allow one thing to happen. Like how as World War I went on, the Ottomans basically tried to get rid of and erase the Armenian minority of basically Christians that were in the Ottoman Empire in Armenia or whatever. That was considered one of the first genocides of period 6 or of the 1900s in the new era that we were in. And I think same thing also happened in World War II with the Holocaust, with the Jewish and the killing of like over 10 million. I'll just go with a nice estimate that I know will be under the correct one and say over because then it can't defend anyone. And then there's like places like Cambodia with the killing fields and Rwanda with the Hutus and Tutsis as that conflict embroiled on and more Tutsis were killed by the majority Hutus. But one thing we can see in all of these is that there's always a minority, and that minority is generally the one killed in the conflicts. So let me draw a nice picture for this. So let's say there's a man here, and that he has another man with him. Maybe there's a few men. They're all generally the same. They're stick figures. There's a few of them. And then, let's say the British come in, the Brits, and say, these two are leaders. So with these two are leaders, these people are part of them. So then they're like, they all get jobs. And they all get jobs. But then, there's a big majority over here who get smaller say, which is why they're smaller. See what I did there? I drew them smaller so I could represent that. And there's a lot of them. And let's just keep doing this. And there's like really a lot of them. I mean, this doesn't explain every big conflict that goes on, but this more explains like the Rwandan conflict between the Hutus and Tutsis. So these guys being like the Tutsis, and I don't think it was the British at all which did this. So this is just an example. I don't. This example didn't happen in real life. I don't think. Well, maybe they did. I don't know. And then these people are like, what? So then like the British are like, then the British, they leave. Like, oh yeah. And then there's like elections. And then after the elections, oh, these people are no longer leaders. And this guy is a leader. Since all these guys over here, all these guys, well, and he also voted for himself, voted for him. So he is now the leader, and he's like, these people did not treat us nicely. And because of that, let's just finish writing this out. Let's kill them. And so it's that this person dies, this person dies, this person dies, this person dies, this person dies. This is like a Game of Thrones episode right now, and this person dies. And then there's all the other minorities around here. Imagine that. And they like try to flee out of the country over here. And then like a lot of people die. Like some of these people die fighting in it. And that's basically, as it goes on, more and more people die, and it just ends up turning to a genocide like the Rwandan one or Holocaust, etc. I mean, it was different for places like Nazi Germany because it was after World War One, after anger, and they're like, we need a scapegoat, Jews. So they framed it on the Jews, brainwashed people into thinking that, killed more than 10 million of them, and you know the history of it. And that's basically how it happens. This is probably going to be my longest one. Isn't this great? Also, I have to say, the birthday cake I've been eating, it's fantastic. Genociding birthday cake. They always go together. Now, during World Wars, mainly World War II, and even further on, governments used a variety of strategies to mobilize populations, to make a population excited. And there are two big examples that I can think of right off the top of my head, and that is being the US, good old US of A, and Nazi Germany's, if I can ever write. So, Nazis. Now, how did the Nazis do it? Well, for one, Hitler. Hitler was very easily able to excite people by saying, like, yeah, this Treaty of Versailles, this is stupid, we're gonna get rid of that, we don't want it, we're gonna go to our neighboring countries and invade them. And I don't think he said that outright, but then he explained how, like, the Jews were problems, etc., and all the false things he said about that. And then, like, I'm pretty sure they had a propaganda campaign. Let's Google it. Nazi Germany propaganda. No, there's also the Hitler's Youth in the Hitler's Youth, in which basically brainwashed young kids to teenagers to older people that, like, this is how you be an ideal German citizen. This is how you'd be an ideal Nazi. This is how you be an ideal person on how you support your country. It's basically this brainwashing. Like, even they even released videos for, like, Jewish people on how awesome concentration camps were. And oh boy, were those just 100% false. And with that, they were just like, yeah. So with the US, they also used a form of propaganda, but most of all, the thing I remember from watching World War II in color were, wait for it, wait for it, war bonds. War bonds are basically, you pay X amount of money, we'll eventually repay you more than that because you're helping support the war. Which honestly, it's a pretty good idea. They were able to get a lot of funding that way because people were like, oh yeah, I'm going to support my country, I'm a patriot, I'm a nationalist, I'm nationally supporting it, yeah. And that excited people. They're also, let's Google, US World War II propaganda. And then I want you for the US Army, like, trying to support people this way, join a share club, and also there was, like, people like Captain America. Well, he wasn't actually a real person, but, like, I'm pretty sure Captain America was made around that time. Like, the women who were back home who were basically running the manufacturing and the industrial part of the country while the men went away to fight at war. It was just basically a huge propaganda campaign. World War II. And yeah, he was just a big, big damn hero. Look at this guy. How could he not love this guy? Like, oh yeah, he's going to war. He's gonna win. And yeah, look at him. He is magnificent. There was much imperial expansion by both European powers and Japan that caused a lot of global conflict. And one of the bigger reasons I can think of is both Germany and Japan. Germany and Japan during World War II and World War One tried to well, yeah, both during World War II and World War One. That is correct. They both try to expand to make themselves bigger, gather resources. Yeah, I'm gonna go into the next one. Gather resources. Germany tried to surround places like Poland, Czechoslovakia, Austria, where they all took over. Like, okay, let's say this is Germany right here. They're a circle, and right here is Austria. Right here is Poland. Right here is Czechoslovakia. Let's say Germany is red. They're like, we want Austria. We take Austria. Now we have all their resources, where they now pump in to Germany. Like, we want Czechoslovakia. then the resources they the resources they have go in. Just redraw this arrow. And they're like, we also want, can you guess? Poland! And they eventually do fall. But however, people like France and other countries in the UK, they're like, no, no, no. And these guys are all going to be blue. They're all going to be, wait for it, blue. And they're like, no, no, no. And they're like, oh my god, why? And they're like, no. And they declare war against they're like getting all the resources, they're getting all the land that they want. And then it's similar to Japan. They're like, big island over here. Germany's like, join us. Like, okay. And then like here's, let's say that's China. So this is Japan right here. They're like, we want this place. They take this place, and then they have all the natural resources and such going back into Japan. Do their manufacturing power and stuff. So basically they have expanded a lot, like, and then they wanted to stop U.S. expansion in the ocean, so they went this way, attacked Pearl Harbor, took lots of islands, and then of course USA declares war. Eventually, what ends up happening is this. We win eventually. The thing is about Germany, that it's kind of cut in half. This side being red and this side being blue, as USSR also takes that. But that is something I've already explained, or will be explained in a future part. Basically, due to wanting resources and wanting more expansion, Germany and Japan both basically declared war for resources and expansion needs. Well, you could also maybe put ethnic conflict in here with the Japanese killing millions upon millions of people all over Japan, like Nanking and such, and the Germans right here before in the Holocaust, killing millions and millions of Jewish people. So yeah, there are many reasons for conflict in the first half of the century, in World War One and World War Two, with expansionist aims by Germany, Japan, and many other countries. But the main two being Japan and Germany in both World War One and Two. So after the event of World War One, and before the events, there are a lot of things that can be seen. For one, there was a great rivalry between Britain and Germany in World War One and Two, because during both World Wars we can see that both of these nations rival each other. So here's Great Britain, their right here. That's a good representation. Well, here's Germany. Germany in World War One and Two both built the navy that was pretty good. These circles, they're ships. Just go with it. So these were the navy. Well, Britain also had a similar navy that were basically just as powerful as each other, but Britain's was a bit stronger. Good job, Britain. Because during World War II, we can see during the Blitz against Britain that Germany is just constantly sending plane after planes and more planes just to go and bomb Britain. Well, the British Air Force is like, nope, 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 nope. And then like Canadians coming in like, nope, nope, nope. And basically that just goes on for quite a while of just constant air battles. Because while the German ground army had been good, both the British Navy and Air Force were still of equal power, if not greater. Well, I'm pretty sure Germany's was actually greater. During World War One, Britain was still actually able to send people to fight during World War One in the trenches and with their navy, which eventually destroyed them. But during World War Two, they had things like the whatever they were called, like that one submarine U-boats. They had their U-boats that they mass produced in Germany, which really had them in the war efforts against Great Britain and everyone else. Next, there are nationalist ideologies, which let me reread something, which basically spread throughout, like Hitler saying he's gonna get rid of it, get rid of the Versailles Treaty, Mussolini and uh, his ideas of, yeah, they have they have this, we're gonna take this, and etc. That would be called, I completely forgot what it would be called. Mussolini ideas. Fascism. Yeah, he was a very big fascist. The United States and their capitalistic approach. There were just a bunch of different ideologies, nationalism policies all over the place, and no one really knew what was going on. The thing is, after World War One, most of the world was sank into a deep, Great Depression because of the amount of money spent on the war. Just thought like, oh yeah, we're just gonna make Germany pay for it, like a wall. But they couldn't because they kind of already spent their money on war. And like the entire world, like especially America, with like the people who moved like West California because they had to be kicked off their lands because of the Great Depression and how with like Dust Bowl because it's cropped and stuff. That a lot of stuff happened after World War One, and World War Two was kind of a jump start out of it for a lot of the nation states around the world. It basically jump started like, yeah, we're here, war, and that like increases productivity, increases money, and everything goes up, and war was good. But the thing is, at the end of the World War II, we were actually able to manage to keep the economy afloat instead of tanking it like in the Great Depression after World War One. Which also in turn led to the creation of the United States and the Soviet Union, which emerged as superpowers, which is basically capitalism and communism against each other. Red versus blue, NATO versus the Warsaw Pact. It is so many things that sing things at once. And well, this slide really isn't relevant anymore, so let's just erase it. I don't care about that over there. So basically, imagine this blob and this blob. This is NATO. And NATO, as is customary, is a blue. That's NATO. And then we have over here, we have the Warsaw Pact, which is between Russia and like all the countries surrounding in the eastern side of Europe and even in the Middle East, I would like to say. So, yes, the Warsaw Pact won, everyone. No one really won, in all honesty, but yes, it was NATO versus the Warsaw Pact in the Cold War as they emerged from the World War II as superpowers. Even though the Allies won, Russia or the Soviet Union was still considered part of them, and it kind of split Germany apart. It was like East Berlin, West Berlin, in the Western powers on like more NATO side controlling it, and then the Soviet powers or the Warsaw Pact controlling the other side, which created a lot of tension between the two, and still even more during the nuclear arms race, during the Cold War, and all the competition. My favorite part about this was the space race, which we could really use another one, or maybe a Save the Earth race. Who could invent the best policies to save the Earth instead of destroying it like we are now? Okay. Basically, after the military, they emerged as superpowers because everyone else basically drained their resources. Like the United States, they came in later. They went in, did pretty well, while like all the European powers, they just drained fighting Germany in two world wars. Well, United States, they increased their productivity to fight these wars, and their economy really got a jump boost. And the same happened in Russia. Even though the Germans invaded them, and they slowly pushed them back past Moscow, they still like this rapidly increased production of like tanks, and that they just like overwhelmed the Germans with tanks, and it was winter too, so that always helps Russia, because the only people that can ever really invade Russia during winter are the Mongols. Or basically the Russians. So good job, Mongols. You are everything we dreamed of. I'm gonna have a cut here. No, I'm gonna keep talking. So yeah, basically then it was just a big, throughout the globe, it was capitalism versus communism, with the United States constantly trying to stop socialist or communist uprisings in places like Cuba, Vietnam, and other places in Southern America, which they did manage to stop. But they didn't manage to stop all of them, like Cuba is still a communist country, Vietnam is still a capitalist country, North Korea is still free during the Korean War, but they still have South Korea. It didn't end up like Vietnam at the very least. So yeah, the Cold War had the new alliances of NATO and the Warsaw Pact, as I have explained here, or basically communism. This is commie, and this is America, basically. And that's a pretty good way to explain it. And they, like I said before, they had like the proxy war, not proxy war. They had the Cold War, was basically like in places like Afghanistan, Vietnam, Cuba. They funded one side and had the other fight it for them. Not really fight it for them, but fight for it. And it was in turn basically U.S. against Soviet Union, in which both of them actually won a decent amount of times. So in this, both sides won a great deal in the communism versus capitalism or democracy struggle. And basically, in the end, I would say NATO won, as the Warsaw Pact no longer exists. Russia is now actually electing people, even if it's not a very good election cycle, because Putin. So basically, when the Soviet Union eventually dissolved in the end, the relationship between the US and Soviet Union was already starting to be better. Because their last leader was like, yeah, and Ronald Reagan was like, yeah. And they were starting to be better. They were actually going to Olympics and stuff. Russia still being good at hockey, unless you count rip off American rules, was basically made an American team win, and I still think Russia actually won that. The hockey game. You guys know about the hockey game in Y class. You know about it. So basically, when the Soviet Union dissolved, it just basically ended it because it wasn't communism. It was now adhering more to the principles of what most NATO countries were, a capitalist country with free trade, etc. So that's really how it effectively ended the Cold War. And now my throat is actually starting to hurt from talking about this, and I have no idea if I even did well talking about this. So that'll be it for now. Alright, so I did lie. It is not actually roast beef with carrots and gravy, but it is actually cake with genocide. Now, and also I should mention, I have this guy in the background, no idea what it's actually doing, but I think it's doing something good. Just have to wait and see. Yes, let's go back to this. Talk about genocides. Now, we're talking about genocides. There's really four main big ones. There's one, the one everyone knows about, Holocaust. And then the one I think almost everyone knows about, but not as much, are Armenian. Then there's the Rwandan. One in Rwanda, if I can type ever. And lastly, there is the one in Cambodia. Now, let's start with the Holocaust, the one everyone knows about. This one was really, it really was before World War II and after World War One. These are the after World War One, there was like the Treaty of Versailles, I think it was, that basically stopped Germany from doing anything. And due to that, lots of big radical people came out and were like, yeah, we're gonna get rid of this and do this, this, this. And wanna know who did this? The Jews. And that was basically Hitler. So basically they ended up persecuting Jews, mistreating them. And then as it went on, they began executing them, putting them in gas chambers, burning them. And as the war went on, they kept doing that, putting them into concentration camps, making them to forced labor and killing them, etc. And that killed almost 10 plus million of them. And yeah, it was pretty bad. The Jews really did nothing wrong here, I must say. Next, the next biggest one is the Armenian genocide, which is still actually a very big topic today, as is the Holocaust genocide, because the Holocaust are still deniers for almost all genocides or deniers for some weird reason. But anyways, the Armenian genocide is still today actually denied by the government of Turkey, saying that no, it was not a genocide, it was just killing millions of people, that's all it was. It doesn't mean it's a genocide if we just kill millions of a minority, a specific minority, because we didn't like them. Sounds kind of similar and kind of set this big guy up. But yeah, it was when the Ottomans were against the Christian Armenian minority in the Ottoman Empire and basically killed them a lot. And where evidence can easily be found, like outside of cities and like a garbage area or whatever, we can just like dig a little bit and find bones from the Armenian genocide. That was due to World War One, where they basically had any excuse to do it because, well, rebels. Like, oh yeah, they were rebels. Like that could be a very good excuse. And anyway, I'm gonna have a piece of cake real quick. Holocaust, Armenian genocide, Rwanda genocide, Cambodia, and cake. Go perfect together. Next one, the Rwanda genocide, which most people should know a lot about, since we learned a lot about it and watched a movie about it in global studies. Is really a conflict between the Hutu majority and Tutsi minority, where I think it was the Netherlands which ruled over them, put the Tutsis in power, and like had them all be leaders. Like I explained this I explained a good bit about this in a, well, it's either in the future or previous. I have no idea how I'm actually gonna put these all into a video, but it was basically Tutsis were leaders. After that, after the big colonizer left, the Hutus took control. And as the Tutsis and colonizers did not really treat the Hutus that well, they were kind of like bit pissed, as most people are when they're not treated fairly. They started killing a bunch of Tutsis, and so henceforth there was a lot of armed conflict, etc. People were pissed. The UN really couldn't do anything. They could send like an angry letter. And that's about it. Still about all they can do. And yeah, this is Cambodian, which is probably the least known out of the four. And I really don't know much about it. I just know that this is like a place near like Vietnam, up in southern Asia. I'm pretty sure. Let me go and double check that. So let's just do Cambodia, and I'm pretty sure it's right next to Vietnam. Yeah, right next to Vietnam. Where basically they started killing like the minority of people like normal, because minorities apparently suck a lot in like the killing fields, etc. And that displaced a lot of people around the world. Like when people like moved from a colony to another empire, they really brought their culture with them. They like really remained together economically. They did that in a many variety of ways. So yeah, I just basically got like 5 done in like one go, 6 done in one go about. Good job, me. I'm gonna have a piece of cake for that one. Good job, me. Mm. Mm. So next I'm going to talk about the, oh, I forgot to type in the thing, I think I forgot to do this for a few things, the anti-apartheid movement, which was actually pretty big in its scale, because first, well, not really first, but Gandhi was actually involved in it when he went there for, like, lawyer stuff. So this guy with glasses, went there, like, tore up his thing, saying he was, like, a foreigner, a minority, and, like, did some anti-apartheid movement until he went back to India and did like, this is India, not like a vase or anything. This is India. Went back to India and did his stuff there. But that's not important right now. This is about the anti-apartheid. And then like some of the big names like Nelson Mandela and his party, which I forgot what it was called. Nelson Mandela. party. African National Congress. Um, let's just make sure I'm getting my facts correct. Also, it's kind of saddening, but he died like in 2013. God, that felt like so much sooner, man. I felt like, well, actually, it was still around 2 years ago, but it felt so much more later. And yeah, Nelson Mandela, who I still sometimes mistake for um, Morgan Freeman, who actually I think played him in the Nelson Mandela movie, because they do look pretty alike sometimes. Morgan Freeman, I love Morgan Freeman, especially in Shawshank Redemption. Anyways, back to anti-apartheid. Yes, anti the apartheid was basically another big thing of segregation in southern Africa, where I think the British still occupied it. Or well, no, not the British. The British actually left it, but there were still the big like white people in control who were afraid of the majority blacks for some reason, because people get really freaked out by that for some reason. I don't know. And basically it allowed like segregated communities, and then there was the big movement where eventually Nelson Mandela was put in jail for like 20 plus years. Then he came out and became the president for a while. And then he went like when died in 2013. Well, he was still a really big person in the entire anti-apartheid movement, as were many people who are also part of the African National Congress, which was a party against the main popular, whatever the group they were against. I learned this last year. I can't remember it very well. I could Google it, but I already did Google it, but I didn't look hard enough. No, let's also talk about global uprisings of 1968. Like, there are protests all across the globe against conflict. You can also include, like, maybe even the anti-nuclear movements as part of this. We were talking about the political agenda of the time, which, oh, hey, look at now. Okay. So basically it started, like, the U.S. civil rights movement and many other different things, like the anti-apartheid movement. Like, all the above could really be told as global uprisings. Global uprisings against another country. Global uprisings against your political system. They were all part of it, like, today. Like, today, stuff like this is still happening. History is still being made. History has been made already today. Well, technically every day, this is what major big history has been made all throughout this year already. Like, just David Bowie dying, I miss you, man. Anyways, yeah, that's like a few things, like, yeah. Like, when I'm going through these, like, it kind of seems to repeat itself, like, oh yeah, global uprisings, and you just look above, like, they're not really uprisings, but they're more protests. Uprisings are turning into less and less of a thing. They're turning more and more into protesting. People are realizing that that can get stuff done, which cake, that's the word. During this time, many colonies of Great Britain and other countries were starting to more break free from their bonds, like America in the 1700s breaking free with very much violence. But in this time, places like India and the Gold Coast over in Africa, which is now part of Guinea, they negotiated their peace. Like India with like Gandhi, all those notable figures, like the Muslim people, and the split into Pakistan and what is now a different country, but it used to be the other, still Pakistan on the other side of India. They negotiated it. And the way they did, they basically protested. Like, people like Gandhi, they walked to the shore of, like, to, like, do something with salt, I think it was. I can't exactly remember what it was, but actually, like, they, like, stopped importing salt into India, like, stopped protests and such, but, like, Gandhi led a bunch of people down to, like, the shore and made salt himself. I don't think it was very successful in the making of salt, but it still proved a point to the British that they really wanted freedom. And the Gold Coast, which is now part of Guinea, they basically also got the British in ways to, like, they were basically just, like, against slavery and, you know, Gold Coast. India's mainly the one right here, which is the important one